Welcome back to another video where we build a brine making setup. We've been talking about for some time building a brine making setup so we can make our own batches of brine time after time. Now it's something we're new to and we haven't really done before, so I'm learning just as much in this video as you guys are. I'm going to share some of the things we've learned, some of the things not to do or you should do, or things I would improve on the next time we build a brine maker like this. So let's get right into it and talk about how we built this thing. So for those of you guys that don't know, we're a small landscaping excavating company out of Stillwater, Minnesota. We don't do a whole lot of snow. We do just over 6 figures a year in snow removal, and we do, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 100 tons of salt depending on the year, right around that 75 tons of salt a year mark. So we don't do a whole lot, but we do enough to a point where brine and anti-icing liquids, things like that have really interested me. One of the biggest reasons I've talked about or want to do this is because we do some really high profile sites that are really nice establishments. The buildings are either brand new or they were just redone. One of them, example, is a church. The whole floor was redone. It's got beautiful marble, all this other stuff. And currently we're using a calcium chloride on the sidewalks, but I'd like to be able to use liquids so people aren't tracking the chloride pellets in and out of the building, tracking that onto the new floors and stuff. This isn't really a concern or something they brought up to us, but it's something I want to be able to do to offer a higher quality service to our clients. So that's why I'm taking a lot of interest in using liquids for anti-icing and de-icing. Now there is a lot of different science, math, whatever you want to call it, that goes into this. It's not just as simple as finding out how much chlorides to put down or pellets and just spreading it. You either have to purchase the stuff, you have to store it in a tank, or you make it yourself. I want to try making it ourselves so we can make smaller batches for now and just learn about it. For me to completely understand something and the best way to do it, I feel like I have to be involved from the ground up process, so to speak, to an extent. So I feel like building a setup to actually, or for some people if it makes more sense, buying a setup, but making your own brine is really important. So you know exactly what's in it, exactly what it's going to take, or what temperatures it's going to work until, because everything's a little bit different with brine. It's not just throwing down salt or throwing down your chloride. You have to make sure you have certain additives in it so it works down to a certain temperature. That we could get into detail on a whole different video. I'm not going to get super into that right now because I personally don't completely understand it yet. 100%, I should say. So we can get into that in a different video once we understand that a little bit better. You might be able to hear in the background, we currently have the tanks running. We're making a batch of brine. This is just salt and water. We don't have anything added to it right now. There's no calcium chloride or anything like that that's spiking it to reduce that temperature, that freezing point, to a lower degree. But let's go ahead and get right into the video of how we actually built this setup, and then let's come back over here and just talk about how it's worked and, well, what would we change. Where are we at now, Ryan?
So we're pretty much plumbed up, just been gluing stuff and kind of test fitting. We got our holes drilled under here. All this is glued, just setting up still.
So the bottom of each one of these down legs has a hole at the bottom that's going to shoot water out, and then hopefully mix the salt and then work its way up. We don't know. The pump's 1.5 inches. So
yeah, we don't really know.
We have 3/8 holes in it.
3/8 holes, 3/8 or 7/16 inch holes drilled in the bottom of each of these right now. We don't exactly know how it's going to work with the flow of the pump, but we should be able to meter the flow a little bit with the valve that we actually have. We've got a couple valves here, but one of these valves, I believe it's this one. No, it is that one.
For this direction.
That will be off the flow of the pump or the output of the pump. I believe we'll be able to kind of use it as a pressure regulator in case we do have too much pressure.
Well, if we have too much pressure, I think we'll just drill some more holes because I want as much flow as possible. The more flow and movement we can have, I guess, I don't know what the perfect pressure to flow. If you want more gallons per minute or more pressure to dissolve the brine faster, but whatever we can do to dissolve the brine as fast as possible is what we want to do.
Probably, I have a feeling it's going to be somewhere in between. Like, you probably want the salt to stay on the bottom and not get churned, but as fast as you can flow it through the salt without it churning up the whole
I think you want it to turn up.
Do you?
As long as it's not gonna like come into this tank and start running salt chunks through the system.
Then pretty much all the power, I think.
That's what, yeah.
I'm thinking for these three like transfer tubes, I'll just do some sort of stupid rack, like
Yeah, hold it up.
do something like stupid simple.
Yeah, nothing crazy. So what do we got left to do? We got to put this piece on. Well, we got to run and get a Fernco for these. What we're gonna do is put a Fernco connector like here somewhere, so we can dismantle this. We can just the Fernco is, for you guys that don't know, pretty much this thing right here. So we can just take the hose clamps off and take the pump off of the whole stand and store this thing outside. Leave the pump inside is kind of the idea. So, I mean, right now we just got to do our Fernco connectors, connect all that shit, and then we're pretty much ready to do like a test run.
Probably gonna end up changing to some sort of different 90 as well here too, because I swapped this piece and this piece, so now this piece is in the way, so we don't really get this all the way down seated. Because if I would have put this piece here and this piece here, this would have been out of the way of the handle. I flip-flop those. But since we're going to be doing that on here anyways, it's probably not even going to be a problem, because we can probably just sleeve right over this onto here and we'll be able to just go from there.
I just ripped ass.
I did that in the tank and then it got stuck. Well, we are pretty much to that point where we need those.
So I'd say let's run and grab those from Menards.
Yeah.
I guess what can we do for that too? What do we want to do?
I was literally just gonna run like two 2x4s across, or like a 2x4 sideways across, and just
literally just set them right
because that
from
way we'll
this to
keep it
this,
downward
bridge across.
pitch, so water won't like sit in there and freeze.
Yeah.
Not that it shouldn't really freeze anyways, because it's gonna be salt water basically.
So that's where we're at right now. All right, so we have what we think is going to be damn near the final product now. We're just draining out the last batch. Oh, come on. There we go. Luke, do you want to do the honors of plugging her in? What we've done now is drill some holes in the sides of these pipes here. So you'll see in a minute how the water flows out.
Ready?
Fire away. So there's holes in the bottom and 2 holes in the sides. You can see here where it's spraying out. I think there's plenty of pressure in the system currently. We might even have to do more holes, because once this gets filled with water and salt, it'll have more pressure on it, clog more holes, etc. or whatever. So it'll be even more pressurized. Actually, turn the water on. Let's just run a full tank. Now what we're curious to see if some sort of like vortex starts swirling all this stuff around, just swirling and swirling by the way we have these angled, which is kind of what we were thinking, is it would just start working its way around and be like a big mixing bowl. So we'll see what happens here with it. It looks like it might a little bit.
let this thing run. Looks like everything is relative. We have one leak in the system, and that's this seal right here. It's got a drip on it.
Thanks to Ryan.
Thanks, Ryan. We've got to cut some fork pockets into these boards down here, otherwise it's pretty well set. Probably gonna have to wait and let that fill up before we keep pumping this. Pump will out-pump our water supply, I would assume. Definitely has some swirling action.
So we're finally mixing brine. It all seems to be working pretty well. It does have, the reason it is brown is because it's got a little bit of ice begone residue that was left in this tank. That's what we were storing in here. We're not going to be using ice begone anymore for the foreseeable future because of the brown color. This really doesn't have much in it, so it should be fine, but I just don't want stuff tracking in and out of buildings. So that's the main reason we're not using ice begone anymore. See, there's a little bit of debris at the top. We'll get like a strainer, screen some of that off, and then what we'll do is, the one mistake we made here is for some reason I thought we'd be able to just pump out of this tank here, come over, and then just open this valve and pump out. That, I don't know what we were thinking, quite frankly, but this has to be at this level to flow back into this tank. So what we're just gonna do is swap this 90-degree fitting right here for a T connector, and then we'll run another pipe over to here into this. That'll be able to open up, that'll be able to open up, and then we'll switch the valves and be able to pump everything out. So that's the one change we have to make, and I think we've got an extra T connector, so we should be able to do that right now. The other thing to point out on this is the base here isn't solid enough to actually move this. With these two tanks filled with liquid, it'll want to move back and forth. Obviously this one's got more liquid than this one, so it's heavier. Not the end of the world because I didn't really plan on storing liquid in here. It's just more of a maker, and then we move it. So as of right now, as you guys saw, we're still in the process of mixing the first batch. It seems to be working really, really well so far. We could probably make about, right now we've got 350 gallons going, but we could probably make around 600 to 700 gallons at a time with the two tanks we have here. Each tank holds about 330 gallons. So 650 would probably be the max amount of brine we could make at any given time. There's a couple of changes I pointed out. Obviously we want to make we have to make some of the pumping. We didn't quite think it all the way through. How the plumbing works, we have to be able to pump out of the second tank that's up higher, and as you guys saw. But so that's obviously one of the changes we would make. Other than that, I mean, this thing so far works really, really well. One of the downfalls of this, one of the hardest parts of this, not the hardest part, but we're gonna try to figure out is how do we store the brine once we've made it. We'll pump it out probably into two more 300 or so gallon tanks, totes like this, and it'll be stored outside. We've got a retaining wall that the stuff can sit on, and that way what we'll be able to do is plug a hose up to the bottom, just open those valves on those totes and gravity feed it into our tanks, and then shut that off, and it should be good. This would be ideal because then we're not having to deal with pumps outside and all this other stuff when it's cold. The brine, we're gonna store it outside for now. We're making such a small batch, we should use it pretty quickly, I hope. And really right now, we're in a total experimental phase. We're just trying to figure out how to apply this, what's the best way to apply it, because one of the biggest battles we have is our sidewalks are hundreds of feet away from a parking lot where we'd be able to park a truck and a sprayer. So we're trying to decide what is the best way to do this. If you guys follow me on Instagram, you saw we bought a couple of different walk-behind sprayers to apply this stuff, and honestly, they were both trash. They both broke before we even got them out of the shop with some water in them to just test them. They didn't work right. So returned both of them. And we're probably not going to be exploring any walk-behind solutions unless one of you guys has a really good walk-behind solution to spray it. Put it in the comments below, please, because I'm actually really interested. That would probably be the best way for us to do it right now, because we don't have that many sidewalks where we need to spend $10,000, $15,000 on a huge sprayer that goes in the back of a truck. Although that would be really nice, I just don't want to spend that kind of money on for something we're only going to use in the winter right now, and we're not at the point that it really justifies spending that kind of money for it. So with that said, we're trying to find the best way to do it. We might have a backpack sprayer, we were talking as one of them. A battery-powered backpack sprayer was an option. We're also looking at getting a little garden tractor to help do sidewalks. We've got 4 of these Toro Power Clear snowblowers sitting right to the right of me. Those work great, but we have a townhome association, or a homeowners association rather, and a golf course that needs to have a bunch of sidewalks cleared. So we might get a garden tractor with a cab, a snowblower, and behind that we might put on a sprayer unit, which we actually have was a weed sprayer, but it's sitting up on the shelves here. And I think that would work pretty well for our sidewalks. We'd be able to show up on site with that in the trailer, back that thing out, drive it around, spray. We could even keep a tote of liquid in the front of that trailer as well to refill. And I'm thinking that should work pretty well. So that's what we're leaning towards right now. That may be a combination of backpack sprayers where 2 guys go out, 1 guy goes in the tractors, hits the walks, another guy fills a backpack sprayer, and he hits the steps and things like that with that. I think that will work pretty well. Time will tell. Obviously, I think the best situation would be like a VSI sprayer in the back of a truck with an automatic hose reel where we can just, a couple of guys can either, 1 guy can bring it out, spray stuff down, and run that automatic hose reel in as he works his way backwards. That would be really slick, but again, spending that kind of money just doesn't make sense for us right now. So, some of the other things I would change, I wish I could have reinforced this, I should have reinforced this plate and everything that it sits on right now. For us, this has to be mobile, and realistically, unless these are empty, it's not very mobile. We have to have these empty for it to actually be mobile, which is a little bit of a downfall. It's not the end of the world. Right now we're in a situation where this isn't a shop we're gonna be in for much longer, and we need to try to get everything or make everything mobile to a point where we can move it to the next location here shortly. So that's a bit of a tricky point right now, because we're working on spending a lot of money on, you know, what's going to be a different shop area. So we don't want to invest a bunch of money into making a brine maker or a setup that fits into this shop and all of that, because we're not going to be here that long. So that's one of the points we're at and why we decided to make one of this size. Realistically, if I knew we were going to be here longer, we probably would have spent a lot more money and time and just built the proper brine making setup that's, you know, a couple of 1,000-gallon tanks or whatever it is, 500-gallon tanks. And so we can make a large batch of liquid, and then we would have put storage tanks inside as well, the whole 9 yards. But right now that just doesn't make sense because of the transition point we're at in our business, going from a smaller shop to hopefully what'll be a larger shop in the next year or 2. So that would be one of the things I would change as well, is just making more of a permanent solution if I knew I was going to be here longer. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think of this brine maker setup. It's not perfect by any means. It's just kind of a learning process and us discovering what works best and trying to be on a real tight budget here. I think we've probably got about $300 into PVC parts, things like that. These totes we've had, they're about 75 bucks used online. You can find them pretty easily. 300 bucks into the PVC, you know, glue, the wood, stuff like that. And then we've got about, I want to say it was $700. I got the pump at Northern Tool. So realistically, we're about $1,000 into this. Not that expensive, and for being able to make 600 gallons of brine at a time for $1,000, I think that's a pretty reasonable price, quite frankly. When you look at some of these other setups, they want, you know, tens of thousands of dollars to purchase a brine maker. So it's really not bad for what it is. It's not the most beautiful looking thing, but it so far does work. Now, alright, thank you for watching the video. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you guys are interested, down in the description below, I've put my social media links, and I actually just started a Parler account. So make sure you follow me over there as well if you want to keep up to date on all the videos. Next week, we've got this brine maker here, how we built it and how it works in a video. So if you want to see that, make sure you are subscribed, and we will see you next week.